Math 13 students. I have some updates here on the 3.2 measures of variation section. This will help you with some of the technical details and we can review some of the material. So follow me over to the screen and we'll take care of things. All right, chapter 3, measures of variation, technical details. A little bit of an outline first. I'm going to go ahead and review how to get data into your calculator. I'll go a bit quicker because by now you should have attempted this by yourself. This will involve a review of the one variable stats command. And then we can move on and identify various measures of variation and discuss how to present them. As I said before, this class requires the use of a TI-84 calculator. Any other calculator really will not do. You've got to get a hold of one of those. If you don't yet have one, you're already a bit behind. Please do make that happen. A little bit of definitional review. A measure of variation is a value that measures in some sense how spread out your numbers might be. Are they far apart from each other? Are they close to each other in terms of value? If you've taken a look at the 3.2 material, you've already encountered this notion there. As always, we'll want to present these appropriately. We will like clear notation with the appropriate symbols. We want to round correctly, and we want to display the units correctly also. And that actually will be a bit of a detail here that we'll need to address. Our measures of variation include the standard deviation, the variance, and the range. The first one is given to us directly on our calculator. The other two actually require a bit of work to get the calculator to offer up the correct values. We'll discuss how to do that. I also want to talk about the round-off rules. As I've said before, it seems like there's a lot of them, but they really are not all that numerous. The round-off rules for our measures of variation are exactly the same as they are for the measures of center, sans the mode. So we'll want to carry one more decimal place than the original data set, and that'll set the rounding for us. So we're going to run through our first example. We'll work with some data entry, and I like to use the same problems over and over again as we work through these concepts. It just makes the keystrokes a bit easier. So we have a random sample, and that'll be important in a moment, for the number of months patients might wait on a transplant list. We're going to go ahead and go over how to enter in the data, and then we'll run through the keystrokes necessary for the one variable stats. Over here on my calculator, I'll go ahead and select the stat key. I'll select edit, and I'm going to go over how to clear your lists as well as how to enter in the data. I've got list 1 highlighted. I'll use the up arrow key to select the L1 name. Now, once I'm there, I can go ahead and hit clear and enter, and the data goes away, and I'm presented with a fresh list. So, 5. Let's see, 5, I said, 4, 3, 10, take your time, 7, 9, 12, 9, 7, 11, and then the last value is 9. And then I like to run back up through the list and check the values against my list, and they look correct. So now I'll want to go ahead and use my one variable stat command to go ahead and do that. That one variable stat command is over here again under the stat key. I don't need to clear this screen or leave this screen or do anything else at this point other than ask my calculator to do the calculations for me. So we'll select the calc tab, and we'll want to use the first option, the one variable stats. And I'll remind people that the lists are accessed here in blue, so I'll select second and L1. So now my data is going to be living in L1, and my one variable stats will go to that particular address, looking for a party, find those numbers and do what needs to be done. I'll go ahead and hit enter. And I'm presented with my one variable stats. Now, as before, we've got a couple of different screens, and we'll use all of this in just a moment. So, did you follow along? As I say, it should be reviewed by now. So we went ahead and we used our one variable stats and we found all the data that we might need. Now, I'm going to go ahead and find the standard deviation. I need to remember notation, rounding, and units. I'm measuring in months. I have no decimal places, so I'll carry a single decimal place. And I'm looking for a sample standard deviation. On my calculator here, I have 2 to choose from, S and sigma. S for a sample standard deviation, sigma for the standard deviation of a population. And I'll remind you again that we have a sample statistic in S and a population parameter in sigma. All right, so I want to carry one decimal place. I see the 8. I look out here. I see a 9. That tells me how to deal with the 8. So my standard deviation is 2.9 months. Notice I've got the notation S, the 2.9 rounded value, and the months, which is the units being measured. Next up is the variance. If I come back over here, I'll note that there is no variance presented on this screen. To find the variance, I actually have to leave the screen entirely. I'm going to go ahead and clear that out. It's easy to regenerate that data. Very, very easy. Now, to find the variance, what I need to do is to square the standard deviation. Your calculator remembers every calculation it does, at least until it does a similar one, and then it remembers that. Under the vars key is a list of addresses where important numbers live. We live in the statistics area code. So I'll select 5. This gives me access to all the values my calculator recently calculated. If I scroll on down to number 3, I'll note that I have access to the standard deviation for the most recent calculation, the one for our sample. I'll hit enter, and while it doesn't look impressive, a second enter shows me that I'm actually carrying all those decimal places wrapped up in that nice symbology. That's the value we need to square, all those decimal places. So this is how we roll on that. We select the vars key. We have statistics. We find our standard deviation. And then I come over here and I use the x squared key to actually square that out for me. Blow on the calculator once for look, hit enter, and I have 8.3636 and a whole bunch of other decimal places there. And again, I want one decimal place. So 8.36 looks like I'll be carrying 8.4. Now what are the units? We had to square the months up here, so the units down here have also changed. The variance, 8.4 s squared, means we've got the months squared in terms of our units. So you'll note correct notation, correct rounding, correct units. We don't want to use the 2.9 because we'll already have some round off error built into our calculation. We want it as fresh as can be, just like bread. Now, one more to go, the range. Easy to calculate, but again, it is not offered up directly. I need a formula. The range is the maximum value minus the minimum value. If I come back over to my calculator, stats, one variable stats, pointed at list 1, hit enter, and there you are again, right back where we started. And I'll remind people that if we take a look at the second screen, I have minimum and maximum data values for my sample. Those are the ones I'll need to use. Maximum is 12, minimum is 3. In terms of months, 12 minus 3, we have a range of 9 months. And I'll present it as 9.0. Again, I'm honoring that rounding rule. Oh, but you say, I don't need the 0. Yes, you do. You want your data to look the same in terms of presentation. Presentation is an important component in any sort of statistical analysis. So there you have it. Took another quick look at how to enter in data. From here on out, I'll probably just do it and I won't talk through the keystrokes, but you'll probably see me do it most of the time, or I may actually bring the data preloaded. Who knows? We've reviewed how to enter in that data. We reviewed how to use the one variable stats And we've identified and calculated the various measures of presentation, and we grooved deeply upon the appropriate presentation. So, the end. Thank you. Goodbye. Go do some stats, and be sure to check back here for more videos.